Hey guys, welcome into another episode of 410 Sports Talk. James Haskell along, my co-host Glenn Martin, and our friend and familiar face on the show, Chris Carter, the Chris Carter, from the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, guys. Glad to be here. It's a fun week. I'm living off of no sleep after Monday Night Football, but it's a fun week. Steelers Ravens week is always a good one.
Absolutely, certainly, and an emotional one with the beginning of the week coming with Ben's last game in Heinz Field, and then of course now rolling into, like you said, Ravens Steelers week. All kinds of emotions, all kinds of respect. Talk to us about that really quickly, if you don't mind. Give the Ravens fans a little bit of an insight into what it was like being there and seeing that last game at Heinz Field. Because to me, watching on TV, it made me think a lot of Ray Lewis game, that Colts game we won the first round of the playoffs, when he did the victory lap and everything. I saw Ben do a little bit of that. What was it like?
It was very much like that. It was the proper send-off for a franchise quarterback with 2 Super Bowl championships. Just all game long, even before the game, when he walks out for warm-ups, you hear people chanting, "Let's go, Ben." Like everyone wanted this for him. And you could tell Ben ain't what he used to be. He threw 46 times and got 123 yards. I mean, like we know what the deal is, but we also know he's going to at least fight to give you everything that he has in each game. And that's why fans love him so much. I mean, you guys remember the Ravens broke his nose in a game, and he literally went back out there to throw a game-winning touchdown pass. That's who he's defined himself as his whole career. He's tough. He always fights to the very end, and the Steelers were able to win with that. And as the game was going on, there was the "Let's go, Ben." Even when Najee Harris ripped off like a 30-yard run, they would chant "Let's go, Ben," because the fans were so into giving this guy his send-off. He was the hero of Pittsburgh for so long, 18 years. And in all 18 years that he's been with the Pittsburgh Steelers, they have never finished with a losing record. Like that shows just how strong of a foundation he gives you at the quarterback position. And then after the game's over, he does an interview with the reporters of ESPN, and you might have seen that on TV, but afterwards, he just kind of stands there for a little bit. Everyone's still chanting, "Thank you, Ben." They put up a tribute on the scoreboard. He stands there, he salutes the fans, sits down on the same bench that he sat down on after he lost to the Browns in the playoffs last year, taking it all in, listening to the fans, getting back up, and then walking around the stadium, high-fiving the fans, thanking them for their performance. And then you see him after he hugs Art Rooney, lots of former players like Plaxico Burress, Charlie Batch, Antonio Holmes, Brett Kiesel. They're all there so hugging him and saying,
"Where was AB?"
You're a funny guy. But funny enough, AB said, I think this might not be his last game.
Yeah, I saw that.
Like, that was the weirdest thing. Also, someone definitely paid him to do that on Cameo.
Oh, for sure.
That was just so bizarre. But forget AB. This night was about Ben. But he does that. And then I thought the most adorable part of all of this was after all of that, he gets to players, the owners, the coaches, the fans, and right at the edge of the tunnel, his 3 kids run up and he hugs all of them. And then his wife hugs them, and you just see them walking off into the tunnel all hand in hand. It was a beautiful picture, an adorable picture for a send-off for a guy who's been a legend in Pittsburgh and one of the best quarterbacks that have ever lived. I know there's a lot of people out there that are like, who matters so much about Ben Roethlisberger? Da, da, da. You know what? There are only 4 quarterbacks in the history of this game that have won more Super Bowls than Big Ben, and I think that's you can't ignore that part of his legacy.
Yeah, I mean, guaranteed first ballot, no doubt about it. One of the legends, no doubt about it. And this is coming from a diehard Ravens fan that loves nothing more than seeing him get smashed. So
now, really quickly, Glenn, before you go into your next question, I have an off the cuff question for you.
Sure.
Chris. Every home game this year, the Ravens have brought in a legend of the game, and I just found this out. I don't know if you've seen this on Twitter or not, but the Ravens are bringing in a particular legend of the game, a player that's longer. Yeah. So if you had to guess who this
would be the most fitting legend to bring back?
Yeah. What's
Terrell
your guess?
Suggs?
That's right. Yeah, buddy. It's like they've been waiting for this. We haven't heard Terrell Suggs' name since he left, and all of a sudden, he's the legend of the game, and I'm sure Big Ben is a big part of that.
It has to be. I mean, those two are very much part of the rivalry, and I think it was like what did Terrell Suggs? He said he's like I own his soul or something like that. And I was like,
I think he said the Lord owns his soul,
right?
But I own his ass.
Right. It was something like that. And then Big Ben was like, yeah, well, I've kind of owned him for most of his career, so I don't know what he's talking about. Like it was just like the banter between those two over the years was always fun. And then also just the amazing plays. Terrell Suggs having some crushing sacks of Ben, but Ben having plays where he stiff armed Terrell Suggs to get off of him and keeping games alive. I mean, just. Again, Mike Tomlin talked about this in the Tuesday press conference. What's built the Steelers-Ravens rivalry is the history of the players that have played it. He brought up Ray Lewis. He brought up Hines Ward. He brought up Ed Reed. He brought up Troy Polamalu. All those guys, including Big Ben. I mean, he says he tells players to this day about when his nose was broken and he came to the sideline and was like, well, that happened. And it's like, well, what's the next call, coach? And he's just like, your nose it doesn't work anymore. But he's just out there making plays. But that's part of the Ravens-Steelers rivalry. It's just it's these guys that they dog it out, and two really great franchises that know the formula to say, hey, each year we're going in, we're giving ourselves a chance to win, and we'll see what the guys can do on the field.
Yeah. And now I do have a follow-up again to that is, did it almost feel like, we talk about emotional victories and kind of expending your emotional tank, like coming now after that, such an emotional victory, does this week carry even similar weight? I mean, it's not at home. They just had the big home send-off and they won. How much is going to be left in the tank? And also, are the players still on the team? It's not a lot of the old guard left. Do they still, because we know the fans adore Big Ben and they'll cheer for Big Ben, but are the players going into this last week for Big Ben, are they going to play for him and fight for him talent? Or is it just, hey, we got a slim chance of getting in the playoffs and we'll fight for that?
It's a bit of both. I mean, one thing I will say is that this is a young Steelers team. I mean, you look at the players that were making big plays in that game against the Browns. Najee Harris, rookie, 206 overall all-purpose yards and a touchdown. Pat Freiermuth, rookie. Isaiah Loudermilk played very well on the defensive line. Rookie. Trey Norwood had the interception of Baker Mayfield at the end of the game. Rookie. Dan Moore Jr., who held Myles Garrett to a single tackle and 0 sacks at left tackle. Rookie. You see all these guys that are new to the team, and then even second-year guys like Alex Highsmith. I mean, Highsmith, he picked 6 Lamar Jackson last year, but he wasn't there for the wars of Ray Lewis and Hines Ward and all the fights that made this rivalry what it was. So yeah, there is a sense of that. But Mike Tomlin brought this up. He's like, hey, man, he's like, yeah, sure, this was an emotional week, but we got to put that behind us real fast. And there's a lot of guys in the roster that do understand that. TJ Watt does understand that. Cam Hayward does understand that. I think even Minka, for as young as he is, I think he gets the rivalry. And one thing is, I will say this, when it comes to playing for Ben, they do really appreciate him. There is a sense like there was a sense across the Steelers. It's like, we're not losing this game for Ben Roethlisberger right now. We're making sure we go out there and we get him one last dub at Heinz Field. Now, maybe they do that again at M&T Bank. We'll see. I know, the Ravens haven't been the healthiest team, so that's probably going to be a hindrance on their part. But if I'm the Steelers and I'm going into this week, I'm saying, look, guys, do this again, and then maybe we got another shot. But the bottom line is right now, put an exclamation point on your work. You have guaranteed Mike Tomlin a 15th consecutive non-losing season, the most to start a career in NFL history. And you get a chance to now put yourself in a position where if the Colts lose to the Jaguars, then you get a chance to make the playoffs. But that there is a sense that there is definitely something important to play for this week. Whether those young guys will get back up real fast for it, because again, it's Monday night going into Sunday. That's a little bit short of a week. We'll see. But I do think the Steelers do have a plan and a focus to try and make that happen as best they can.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. And of course, this season more than any other has been a battle of attrition, be it COVID, be it, season-ending injuries for pretty much every team. I mean, it's been incredible to watch backups of backups play in primetime games. And we've experienced that more than, just like a lot of these other teams. But my question really is, with it being a short week, are there any new injuries that are, guys that might not be back in time or that they sustained last night that, because I know there's been a lot of guys that have been out all season, but are there any new ones out there that you're a little concerned about not being able to suit up based on the fact that it's a short week?
Well, a few guys. Trey Turner, right guard, had a knee injury in this last game. Kind of became something that they overlooked. But Dan Moore Jr.
Did he stay in there?
He did, but it was still like a shaky thing.
Yeah.
Dan Moore Jr. had an ankle injury, the starting left tackle. And this is an offensive line that's already down to its 5th left guard of the season right now in John LeGlue. So they've been piecing things together. J.C. Hassenhauer, backup center, starting as well last week. They've been putting everything they could together to try to keep that lineup, but also the defensive front. You already knew that you had Tyson Alualu and Stephon Tuitt missing. Chris Wormley couldn't get back for this game because of COVID. So you had Henry Mondu and Isaiah Loudermilk playing a lot of snaps, 2 guys that you didn't expect to do that this year. But then also the linebacker position. Devin Bush has now missed 2 games for being on a COVID list. Joe Schobert missed this last game, as well as Chris Wormley on the defensive line, missing it for COVID. Now, those guys might return this week, depending on how they test. But the injury concerns, I'd say the biggest ones are that offensive line. Can they get healthy? Because they need to try to find a way to build momentum moving forward. But one thing to note, though, the Steelers did get, their offensive line coach, they excused him and let him go on to a new job at Oregon to get their offensive line coach job. Basically, he got offered a lot more money to do that. So they were like, well, we're not going to stop you. But this new offensive line coach who was promoted, Chris Morgan, did a really solid job this past week. We'll see if he does another solid job this week with what the Steelers can put together.
Yeah, now I got to switch. I got to talk a bit. I mean, it was the showdown of 2 elite pass rushers last night, and it didn't look like much of a match. I mean, TJ freaking Watt. Is it a foregone conclusion? Because I think it is. He's going to break Strahan's record, right? And people say, people are like, well, it's the extra game. But correct me if I'm wrong, he hasn't played in every game this year. How many games has he actually played in? And are
14.
you expecting – so in 14 games – so he's not even going to play the whole season. And, as much as I hope and pray that the Ravens can hold up, I have serious doubts that we can keep him. What does he need to get the number? And is it a foregone conclusion he gets it?
If he gets 1 sack, he ties it. If he gets a sack and a half, he breaks it. So, and again, in 14 games, and I'd say at least 3 of those games, he was pulled out of early because of injuries that he sustained this year. Also, something to remember, he has cracked ribs right now. He got 4 sacks in a game with cracked ribs. Also was being held and had hands to the face and all sorts of other things the Browns are getting away with.
I'd hold him too.
I mean, but it's TJ Watt at this point. What more can you say about this guy? And Steelers fans, they were upset 2 years ago when he didn't get Defensive Player of the Year. They were upset last year when he didn't get Defensive Player of the Year. And last year he led the league in sacks. So the year before they were like, oh, well, he wasn't the sack leader. He can't get it. Well, last year he did. And then they gave it to Aaron Donald. And granted, Aaron Donald, beast, monster. He's from Pittsburgh. The people don't hate that, but people are like, okay, is TJ ever going to get his due? If he doesn't get his due this year for Defensive Player of the Year, I know Micah Parsons is being awesome and stuff in Dallas, but this guy is the best edge rusher in football.
It's terrifying.
And a lot of the people that said, oh, Myles Garrett this, Myles Garrett that. In the last, what's it, 4 games, Myles Garrett has like 3 sacks. And in the last game, TJ Watt has 1. Like, it's like, come on, man. There's not even a close comparison.
Other way around, though, right?
Yeah, I think you said it backwards.
I'm sorry. The last 4 games, Myles Garrett has 1 sack, and the last year, you're right. Thank you for correcting me. In the last 1 game, TJ Watt has 4 sacks.
To me, it's not. I mean, as good as Myles is, TJ Watt. I mean, first of all, he's an outside linebacker, so it blows my mind, but I still see him drop into coverage sometimes, which really, I'm like, I don't think I'd ever drop this guy into coverage, but yeah, to me, I think TJ is the obvious, number 1 pass rusher right now, certainly from the edge position.
And the other factor of this is when you look at the fact that he's dropping back in coverage, TJ Watt doesn't rush the passer nearly as much, but he's getting more sacks. He rushes the passer. In fact, Ross McCorkle tweeted this out earlier, according to PFF. He said, right now, Myles Garrett is getting a sack for every 34.7-ish pass rush snaps that he has in the NFL. TJ Watt is getting a sack for every 17 and a half.
Yeah, I saw that. That's
like it's half.
What is it?
It's his ability to finish. One thing I said from the day that he got to Pittsburgh, he was relentless, but he didn't have pass rush moves. And James Harrison said, hey, 9-0, come with me. And he showed him how to do this move, and he showed him how to do that move. In his rookie season, he had a couple of the moves, but they faded as the season went along. That year when he came back, you saw he had a spin move, he had a rip move, and he had a swim move.
He's got them all.
And now he's combining the moves. He's ripping into a swim. He's swimming into a spin. And you're like, what am I supposed to protect? And now he's explosive.
It's the explosiveness, man.
He's so quick off the ball, and he's so strong. If he gets his hands on you, you're in trouble. He puts it all together. He's the best edge rusher in football right now. And I mean, it's crazy enough to say he may already be the best edge rusher in Steelers history. They've had a bunch of them that you could put up there in that fight.
Yeah, that is crazy, but certainly I would agree with that sentiment as well.
Mm-hmm.
So on the other side of the ball, though, offensively, obviously Najee goes over. He not only goes over 1,000 last night, but I think he also broke what's his
Franco
name?
Harris's.
Yeah, there you go. His record. However, I mean, I know he's gotten a lot of action, right? Like he's got a lot
88% of their snaps or something crazy.
It's pretty incredible. How do you see them attacking the Ravens this week? With the Ravens, as beat up as they've been, I think they're
number one run defense in the league,
like 86,
still
something like that. It changes every week. Rushing yards allowed. How do you see them employing or deploying Najee Harris in this game, being that we're relatively effective against the run?
I truly think that the Steelers are going to still try to do it. I think they're excited about this offensive line with J.C. Hassenauer, their new center, in and how he played against the Browns. But Mike Tomlin talked about it. He said Calais Campbell, Brandon Williams, those guys up front, they're tough to move. And he said they knew it the last time when they played them. They know they're going to need some help, and they know the weakness for the Ravens defense has been the secondary. They're so hurt up at the cornerback position. Maybe Ben Roethlisberger gets a chance to make some plays in this game. In this last game, he didn't want to give the Browns too many chances to create turnovers. Maybe this is a chance where he says, you know what? Maybe we can get some open receivers. Maybe we can get some one-on-one chances that I feel more comfortable to throw into and build something moving forward. But Najee Harris, man, he's been really feeling it. He sees guys at the second level. He sees guys at the first level. He's identifying who he has to beat each time. I think Najee Harris is on something else. They're going to feed him. He's going to get his opportunities. But I do think they try to come up with a balance. For me, this game is going to be more so about, can the defense keep the Ravens off the board so that the Steelers can do that and fight their way through the times when the Ravens are stuffing the run, because you know that they're going to bring it. They're going to make it not easy on the Steelers to run the football. But the Steelers, they love what they're seeing out of Najee Harris. He's a smart running back. He's a tough running back. And that's one thing that he's always said, I'm built for this. He's always been built for getting more carries, and he doesn't get tired. Like Le'Veon Bell was a guy in his prime. He wouldn't call himself out of games. He would just say, I'm staying in there. Najee Harris does that, and they're the ones that have to say, hey, Benny Snell, go get him a breather, let him come off and get some rest. Najee Harris wants to be out there. I think it's a really good sign for him that he's keeping that going. Will the Steelers do that? I think they try to come up with a more balanced attack in this game, but it will be more of a conservative one, because their big thing is don't turn the ball over and you have a chance to win.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that the turnover battle all year is something the Ravens have certainly struggled at. I think they're -10 on the season. So, man, if they turn the ball over, it typically ends up in the loss column. So hopefully, for Ravens' sake, that we can hang on to it. Now, I was watching some of the game, and I know Deontay Johnson's picked up and kind of erased some of his drops issues that we've seen over the last couple, but we did see a little bit of that last night, as well as Chase Claypool kind of let a couple get through his hands. Certainly that back shoulder. It would have been a tough catch, but, I think Ben would hope he'd grab that most times. As far as the pass catchers go, do you think that this is something where this group can take advantage of that beat-up secondary of the Ravens? Because we did see the return of Jimmy Smith, and he played probably about as well as he's played all season.
Maybe
last
in a couple seasons?
Yeah, I mean, he was certainly moving around well. Let's see if he can do that 2 games in a row, which is something that at his age he's not been able to do. But do you think they have the talent on the outside to take advantage of that beat-up secondary?
I think the biggest factor is Deontay Johnson and how much the Ravens let him get open. A lot of teams are shadowing a safety over Chase Claypool because they're so scared of his speed, despite the fact that he just hasn't had the numbers this year to back that up. I think a more likely situation, you see Deontay Johnson get targets, but Ben Roethlisberger has fallen in love with Ray McCloud, the team's 5th receiver who's worked his way up. He's become the slot man in the place of Juju Smith-Schuster. He's quick, he's fast, and he'll get open like that, especially on shorter plays. And he's a tough little guy. He's a tough guy that went from just the return man to being a decent guy there. But to me, the bigger option receiving wise is Pat Freiermuth, and it's not on the outside. It's going to be finding ways to get him open and let him catch the ball and then run through and run over defenders. He's been very athletic this year in doing that. But if I'm the Ravens, I'm taking away Deontay Johnson because his ability to separate and make easier passing lanes or passing windows, for Ben Roethlisberger to attack, that's where I see the bread and butter for the Steelers passing attack is finding him. Because the other factor here with Chase Claypool might be able to make more of those happen if Ben Roethlisberger was just in more into his prime where he could throw better balls into those tight passing windows. He's just not as much there, so there's less better opportunities for him. But Chase Claypool's definitely in a sophomore slump. If I'm the Steelers, I'm checking to see if Deontay Johnson's doubled. If he gets an open space, I give him a shot. If not, I'm finding Pat Freiermuth and Najee Harris and letting those guys do their work.
Well, let me. I'm sorry, Jimmy, but let me just ask one other thing. Do you think that Claypool has any type of grief in the sense that he looks over and he sees Deontay Johnson has 60 more targets than him over the season, or is that just a reflection of, look, Deontay's just open more than you are, Chase? Like, do you think he has any grief going, well, if I had 60 more targets, maybe I would eat up the extra 300 yards Deontay has on me?
Any grief that he has is just with himself at this point, because I'll tell you this, he's actually kind of started to emulate Deontay Johnson in his work ethic, at least for practice, because early on before the season started, Deontay Johnson will be the first one out there practicing catching tennis balls and footballs over one shoulder, over another shoulder, different situations. He wanted to create more sure hands. And yes, he had a big drop in this last game. He had a couple drops against the Chiefs. That has regressed late in the season. But throughout most of the season, his hands had improved. Guess who's starting to do that now? Chase Claypool, because I think he sees the writing on the wall. He knows he got 2 years to prove to the Steelers he deserves to be part of their plans moving forward. And it's going to take a more concentrated effort from him to win in those situations. So how does he do that? Shoring up his hands. I think Chase Claypool, it's not more of an envy situation. It's more of just kind of like a, hey, you know what? If I want to get paid by this team, I'm going to have to do this at a better level than I am. And that's an example of the kind of improvement I need to make. I mean, remember this time last year, everyone was wondering, man, Deontay Johnson, is he ever going to be good? And then through most of the season, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, he is good. It's just that he has to focus a little bit there. So I think it's going to be a similar situation with Chase Claypool. We'll see how he responds to this offseason, what he works on, and how he shows up after the offseason in training camp when the Steelers get back to work.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point because I think every rookie goes through that where it's like, okay, I'm in the league, then people start to recognize me, and it's how they respond to that moving forward. But my concern is you talked about Freiermuth and Najee Harris in the passing game, and I immediately think about number 6, Patrick Queen, and I heard. Yeah, I heard Mike Tomlin, giving him praise, saying he's probably the best middle linebacker in the AFC North. And Mike, I respect your eye, but I think
he's blowing smoke.
Yeah, a little bit of coach speak here.
That Queen looked lost last week.
Mike Tomlin does not ever speak poorly of other players. No, wait. No, he's always like, yeah, oh my gosh, like that guy Baker Mayfield, phenomenal player. He throws the ball everywhere. The challenges that he gives us makes us excited to play on the football field. Like he'll say stuff like that, and he'll respect it. He'll say it because he knows if you say something negative about a player, what is it? It's bulletin board material. And immediately, bang, you're taught. It's a story on ESPN and everything. So talk them all up and hype them up to your players. You know what? You're getting ready to play Patrick Queen this week. He was a first-round draft pick for a reason. Believe you better beat him. And people say, well, his film, he don't look great here. Well, guess what? He looked fine over here, so you better get ready. Otherwise, you'll look not great on film. That's just Mike Tomlin being the motivator that he is, not giving any ammunition to opponents, while also keeping his team energized and saying, hey, we got to go beat that guy over there.
Well, does it send any sort of a message to Devin Bush?
I think it might. I think Devin Bush has had a very up and down season. He started to trend upwards before he got put back on the COVID-19 list, but he struggled for a lot of this year trying to get his legs back under. I mean, heck, he's recovering from a torn ACL. It takes some guys a lot of time to recover from that. I think he started to find his feet again in the last few weeks. He's been more instinctual, more aggressive, but then he got COVID and that kind of backed off. So Devin Bush, I mean, he can feel a slight to it if he wants, but I think it's more so just about Mike Tomlin's just pointing out like, hey, that guy's made plays. He's been around and he's been healthy. Devin Bush hasn't.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's see what Devin Bush can do next year with a full off season and if he can get healthy. But what happens in this game? What's your ultimate prediction? I know it's early. It's only Tuesday. I know it's only Tuesday, but and we can always say that with the caveat of you can always change your feelings. But right now, as of Tuesday, what's your feelings on how this game turns out?
I feel like the Ravens are in too much of a downward spiral right now, just with the injuries and all that they've gone through, and having to start Josh Johnson the other week is just it's really rough. And then the cornerback situation, Lamar's been hurt. It's been to me, it's too rough to see them come out on the other side. I think this will be a tight game. I don't think it's going to be the Steelers control this by any means. But I think this is one of those, another weird one that comes down to like the final 5 minutes of the game, and the Steelers make a couple big plays. The Ravens, make a couple mistakes, and the Steelers end up winning by a single possession. And give themselves at least a chance to make the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised if the Ravens win. Again, the Steelers coming off Monday Night Football, a little bit shorter of a week there, and it's an emotional win for Ben Roethlisberger, like you were saying earlier. It's tough for younger teams to just get back re-energized and get right back into the swing of things when it comes to that situation. So I'm picking the Steelers. I'm keeping it low scoring. I'm keeping it close. But I do think Pittsburgh can come out with this win in this week, and they know that they need to. I think beyond that, some Steelers fans, they want them to lose out so they can get a better draft position. I'm like, the Steelers still believe in themselves as a playoff contender, and if they can get to the playoffs, they'd have a chance to prove it. So they want that chance. They'll be fighting as best as they can in Baltimore for it.
Man, it's going to be one heck of a game. I can't wait to be there. Chris, why don't you let everyone know where they can find the things that you're working on and to follow you on social media?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Glenn, for having me on. You can always find me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Do follow me there to get all my takes and all my stuff there that I'm always doing. But you can listen to me daily on the Locked On Steelers podcast that goes Monday through Friday. You can find that on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, anywhere podcasts are hosted. You can also read my work at dkpittsburghsports.com, where I'm covering the University of Pittsburgh's football and basketball teams, as well as the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's a lot of great stuff that I get to do, and I'm privileged to do here in sports media. I got to cover the ACC champion Pitt Panthers and Kenny Pickett, and wondering where he's going to go in the NFL draft this season. I also get to cover the Pittsburgh Steelers and what's ultimately going to be Ben Roethlisberger's final season as a Pittsburgh Steeler. So it's been a pleasure of a ride here this year to experience all of that in one season. But you can find, again, all that work. I tweet everything out via my account at Carter Critiques.
Nice. All right. Well, thanks, Chris. We appreciate it. And if for whatever reason, the Steelers get in, I guess there's going to be a portion of Ravens fans pulling for them. I always know that the Ravens fans like to pull for the AFC North teams once the Ravens are out, but it ain't going to be me. It ain't going to be me, Chris. But thanks again for coming on with us. Appreciate it as always.